Eddie. You ready?
Ready.
Eddie. All right. We are back with another episode of our movie review show.
Spider-Man, Spider-Man,
And we got new microphone.
radioactive Spider-Man.
So if that doesn't include you in, we're here to talk about the new Into the
The Flash.
Oh, sorry. Across the Spider-Verse.
Across the Spider-Verse.
Yeah. All right. So the first one was Into the Spider-Verse, now Across the Spider-Verse, then
Yes.
Beyond the Spider-Verse.
Beyond the Spider-Verse.
I do think it is a very consistently named franchise.
More so than the Fast franchise.
More so than the Fast franchise.
Yes.
I still love just the absolute insanity that is
More
that.
so than the John Wick franchise.
Yeah, John Wick, then
Yeah.
chapter 2, then chapter 3,
Parabellum.
Parabellum,
And then 4.
and then chapter 4.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Weird.
Apparently, in some countries, John Wick chapter 4 was called John Wick Baba Yaga.
Excellent. No notes. No notes. Welcome to our John Wick podcast, where we
Again, every single fucking
Yeah.
time it just delves into it. But this is a follow-up to a very beloved movie, I would say. I think Into the Spider-Verse is probably one of the highest rated
Oh, for sure.
Spider-Man movie, right?
I don't. When the first one came out, I don't think I saw anybody who gave it a negative review. And I'm looking up the first one right now just to remember the
So
year.
my recollection is the first movie came out and it was good. People liked it. But it didn't do like huge like gangbusters in the theater, right?
No, but in terms of like evaluation and the film's quality, people
Hmm.
fucking loved this movie.
People
Yeah.
loved it, and they do say, that this is like the best animated movie ever.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm not saying
I'm
I'm
not
not saying
saying
I think yeah,
yes,
I'm not
but
saying I
I'm
think
also
that, but I would if someone said that, I'd be like, fair.
yeah, like exactly. Like if somebody
Yeah.
were to say that to my face, I could not in good conscience be like,
Yeah.
no, you're wrong,
Yeah.
because it is very good. Um,
I would say similarly to John Wick, actually. I mean, these movies kind of show the importance of style. Not necessarily style over substance, but like,
style with substance.
yes.
Yes.
But emphasis on the style. Style is in boldface
Yeah,
and italicized
for sure.
and underlined.
And here's the thing. So I think what helps in this movie is that it has a very specific look.
Hmm.
At least in the first movie, it did. Like you could see a frame of that movie and be like, this is Spider-Verse. It just has a look.
Right.
This movie changes it up, which I think is kind of smart.
I think the look is still fucking gorgeous.
The look is great. The
Yeah.
look is just gone up.
Yeah.
I what I mean is like in this movie we actually spend time in other universes.
Yeah.
And then each of those universes has a very specific
Look
art
to it.
style and look to it, right?
Yeah.
Miles's look is kind of like a weird, like cell shaded, but also still comic book look.
Hmm.
Gwen's world is more like watercolors.
Mm.
When we go to
India.
we go to Mumbai.
Yeah.
It's got kind of more like vibrant colors,
Yeah.
very kind of also like it's very vibrant but also washed out at the same time. We don't get to see a lot of Spider-Punk's like world, but we do get a lot of his art style and like how he's animated.
That was cool.
He kind of looks like if you took a ransom note and you made a comic book out of it.
He looks like when you go to the punk rock museum exhibit.
Yeah.
And the exact aesthetic.
He
It's
looks
there
like
all the
he
time.
looks like a cover of like a Sex Pistol
Yep.
album, which is
Like he physically does.
yeah,
That's
which I think is what makes him stand out.
Yeah.
I like the joke in the movie though, where he's like, "How is it that you look cooler without your mask?" He's like, I was always cool, mate." Very fun movie though. I do have some issues with it. I'm not like this is my favorite movie of the year. It's probably gonna be in my top 10 of the year for sure, I think.
I don't know if it'll ever be that for me, just because I like these movies. I respect them for they are. I can't like get fully like engrossed into them.
Mm?
Um, but I just kind of when I watch this movie, I just kind of let the frames wash themselves over me, so to speak.
Um, so I think for me on the animation alone,
Yeah.
I think it's pretty high up for me.
Hmm.
Um, where I think it kind of falters a little bit is in the execution of how this fits into like
A trilogy.
a trilogy.
Mm.
And we'll talk a little bit about it in a second. Um, just for non-spoiler purposes, are there any standout characters
I
that
really
you
like
touch on?
I like Miles's parents in this movie.
Spencer, great.
Yeah, they have this really like because it avoids like the cliche of like when the hero who has the secret has to leave and like he leaves on like a total sour note with his parents. Like I like how it kind of leaves on the cliche where his parents are like, okay, go get the girl, even though like we acknowledge that like
That's not
that
just
there's
what's
some trust
happening.
issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, that there's some trust issues going on.
Hmm.
I like how his parents are able to balance, you know, their worry for their son
Hmm.
with also the realization that they have to kind of let their son do their own thing.
Hmm. And I
Um,
do think that kind of also separates, it does separate Miles from like other comic book characters.
yeah,
Even in the like in the Spider-Man like mythos, right? Like you have these conflicts, and you can see it with like Gwen and her dad.
right.
We've seen it with like Aunt May and Peter in the Marvel Spider-Man. Even in kind of like um, the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. Like, yeah, they're not like contentious. Like the relationship between like Aunt May and even Uncle Ben
Hmm.
and Peter is not like a combative one, but it's not like what you feel like the defining characteristic of like the character is. Where I
Yes.
feel like in this one, you do feel that like his parents like impact him, and
Yeah,
he's not like "fuck you, mom," "fuck
that,
you, dad."
that Aunt May archetype, like, there's very much like a come home element,
Hmm.
like to that character whenever you see that character in film or books or wherever. Whereas like with these parents, they're like, yes, we want you to come home, but we also want you to like
Do your thing.
do your thing.
Yeah.
Or at least we're giving you permission to do your thing, even
Hmm.
though like it is hurtful for us. So props to actually Lauren Velez for escaping Maria LaGuerta and playing like a very, very likable character in this movie.
So you know she's been in a couple other things
Mhm.
where she's also like very nice.
Yeah.
She was in the Purge.
Oh shit, really?
Yeah, she was in the first Purge.
Yeah.
She plays like a church friend from for like the main characters, and she's just there to like chill and be like, there. But she's like a really nice lady. And I'm like, nah, you're supposed to be a really mean lady.
I'll only speak about this for a second. I kind of thought like 20% of the hate for LaGuerta was like unfounded in that show. Well, like I'm glad she's found these other niches. The other standout character, fucking Spot.
Spot. All right. So here's the thing about Spot. I think Spot suffers from the fact that he's painted as this like
Painted.
huge, yeah,
Yeah.
almost literally
Yeah.
painted as this like huge like existential threat. But then like you have other characters that come in to kind of fill in that antagonist role, and he's then delegated to like sequel.
So that's the thing. In fact, so skipping ahead just a little bit, I'm almost a little concerned as to like what, if anything, will happen to him in the sequel. I feel like there's a good chance they might just sort of brush him, not completely brush him away. Um, but I liked how the movie starts by setting him up as kind of like that opening villain, like he's like Scarecrow
Yeah, like
in
a
Batman or
goofy
in Dark Knight, or he's the fucking Rhino in Amazing Spider-Man, right? Where you're like, all right, and the film actually, straight up,
jokes about him
yeah,
being a villain of the week.
yeah.
Like,
But the
Miles does not take him seriously at all. He's texting his dad and mom
yeah,
while you know, fighting with him.
but Spot just like fucking wrecks shit.
He gets he gets the movie equivalent of a glow up.
And I think it's also interesting that like I know we have him and like Polka Dot Man from like Suicide Squad. Who obviously are still very different characters, but it's interesting that you have like both these characters who kind of hit above their weight class.
You know,
Second time I've used this
that's
phrase
second
today.
time you use this phrase today.
I won't mention the third the first time. Who both do that, and their whole motif is like, what's the most basic fucking shit?
Yeah. And you know, okay, so let's go ahead and go into the deep story and get into like the nitty-gritty of it.
Yeah.
Um the thing I do like about Spot is that you do believe his escalation of power
Hmm.
because of how they set up the like what gave him his power and then what he can then do to then gain more power using that.
Yeah.
Right. So he got his power. I do like the tie-in when they're like, I made you, you made me.
Yeah.
He's the one who brought in the
The
spider
spider.
from another universe. Uh, then he's the one who, like, well, he's not the one, but he was one of the people who was in the same place as the like collider
Right.
was that then gave him his spotty powers, right?
Hmm.
Um, so I do like that kind of tie-in to Miles because a lot of the times you have these villains who y- they kind of then make them fit into the hero story, but then you're like, does it really work?
You mean like Sandman and Spider-Man 3?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like you get to the third movie and like suddenly, oh no, this is the guy that killed your uncle, not the
Yeah.
other guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So
I
it's not a
feel like
retcon.
exactly. I
Right.
feel like this does a pretty solid job at not retconning, still making him believable. But I think what I like the most about him is that like he's goofy as shit at the beginning,
Yes. And then he's just fucking existential.
and then by the time he gets like his full power,
Yeah.
he's like menacing as shit.
Yes.
Genuinely, like his look, his actual like character design, I think is very cool.
Well, he goes from like white and black to like black and white. Right.
Like
Yeah.
the entire opposite. Like now he's not just a white mask with a few like
Little
you know
splotches.
little splotches that you know those spots are what he uses to like move across the multiverse.
Right.
Now he is entirely made of that
That.
potential. So like
Yeah.
what he can do is just on his look alone shows you like well now he is actually that existential threat that
Yeah.
like they're worried about. Um, but like I said, I do kind of think it sucks that halfway through the movie he's gone and does not return
Yes. And does he return
because
for a little bit at the end? I can't
he
remember.
returns for a
Well,
scene.
because he's trying to kill Miles' dad.
Yeah, so at
Yes.
the end of the movie, he does show up back in Miles's New York.
Right.
All you see is like a little black cloud, and
Yeah.
then he falls down. He like stands up, and that's it.
Yeah.
Because then the second half of the movie is delegated to Miles versus the Spider Society,
Right.
um, which I don't dislike, but I do feel like it detours Miles a little bit.
Hmm.
It does resolve his like internal conflict of like wanting to belong because that's what the whole movie is. He wants to go back to his friends, right?
Yeah.
He doesn't feel like he has obviously besides his family, he doesn't feel like he has like real friendships
Right.
here. He has Genki,
I don't even remember who fucking Genki is. His roommate.
his roommate,
Right.
but he's kind of a piece of shit.
We really don't see him much in this movie, right?
No, he's
Yeah.
just kind of a dick. He's just like, I don't want to be your friend. I don't want to be your guy in the mask. I don't want to, or the guy in the
Yeah.
chair. He doesn't seem like he's actually like, you know, like super friendly with Miles.
Well, that's interesting because then it also dovetails with the whole theme of like, a Spider-Man story doesn't have to fit into, you know, doesn't have to fit into the established beats and the established like archetypical, right,
Yeah, and that
story
there's
structures.
that, but at the same time, like I feel like you can then see why Miles would want to seek out like the friends he made in Into the Spider-Verse, right?
Correct.
Because like he just does not have those friendships, and that kind of sucks.
He wants connection. Uh, and he has to find that connection in, ways that literally go beyond like the limits of existence.
Yeah, and I do like the scene where they're talking to the 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 guidance counselor, I'm assuming,
Hmm.
and she's like, "You're a struggling immigrant family." She's like,
Yeah.
we're Puerto Rican."
I was watching that scene. I was like, oh. But then it's interesting because it kind of like I thought they were just gonna set that scene up to be like, oh fuck you, lady. But they do like she does kind of end her little part in the movie with some not wisdom, but like she's able to tell that like Miles is lying.
Miles is
Yeah,
lying. She also
and she
then
points
like
it out to the parents.
to the mom.
Yes,
The dad's still kind of oblivious.
right. And he's
I think dad is too kind of spread thin with like everything going on.
he's Mr. Police,
He's Mr. Police.
right?
I left you all the clues,
Yeah.
and I do like that she does kind of prompt Miles to be like, you need to figure out what you want to do.
Hmm.
Because he does tell mom and dad like he wants to do something that he finds meaningful,
Correct.
right? Yeah, sure. Maybe his Spanish is not great, and mom is upset about that, which I
Yeah.
thought was a very funny scene.
Yeah.
Because if I ever took a Spanish class and I got anything less than A plus, my mom would probably kill me.
Oh, for sure.
Uh, but for him, like that's secondary to him wanting to like discover a way to travel between dimensions,
Yeah.
right? And that's why his AP physics is like super high, and like his art is very high because those things are there that are meaningful to him.
I forget. Does he have an A minus or a B
I think
in English?
he has an A minus in like algebra or something like that,
There's one in
and
English where it's like, oh, it's a hard class. He doesn't have he doesn't have a high A in English. I know that.
something like that.
Yeah.
Um, but they're like, yeah, the teacher's a tough grader.
Yeah.
But that kind of also then sets up the theme of him needing to figure out what he wants to do, not what is supposed to be as Spider-Man, right?
And this is where I guess okay. So this is I guess where I enter into trepidation, where this movie like or haven't fully evaluated this movie, and then whatever's going to happen for the next movie. Because I think that's a common theme I've heard for a lot of people, right? Not just you,
Hmm.
but they're like, I'm not sure how to like grade this movie because it's like an unfinished, like it feels like an unfinished movie. I didn't fully feel that, although I see where that totally comes from. I like that this movie is also hitting on the established story structure doesn't have to be what the traditional story structure is, right? Like Spider-Man can be anything. Like Spider-Man can be a fucking popsicle,
Sure.
right? Spider-Man doesn't have to be like Whitehead Peter Parker, right? Um, and I get that, and I like that. And there was another movie that I loved that also did that same thing, and that movie was a little ditty called Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, right? Which the whole idea was like Star Wars doesn't have to be like this. Like Luke Skywalker doesn't have to be like the end all be all like of this shit, right?
Sure.
And then, the reaction to that movie happened and like they totally just like backtracked. And I think my trepidation comes into the fact is like I like when these studios go for the meta narrative of like the traditional story that we know doesn't have to be the only like iteration of this character. Like we could do anything we wanted with this,
Hmm.
right? And then the edge lords like typically get mad, but I don't know that like I think studios know how to say that the story can be anything. I don't know that they're at the point where they know how to do the fact that the
Yeah.
story can be anything.
So I think I know what you mean,
Yeah.
but like my difference here is so let's say Star Wars, right? You use
Yeah.
Star Wars, and a lot of people are saying, well, like, well, so what if it ends on a cliffhanger? You know what else ended on a cliffhanger? Star Wars,
Empire
The
Strikes
Empire
Back.
Strikes Back.
Yep. Yep.
They also use the point of Infinity War ends on a cliffhanger.
Yeah.
But I think there's a difference between those cliffhangers and then this cliffhanger.
Because this epilogue lingers for like
So
quite a
long,
bit. Yeah.
so fucking
You
long.
almost do feel like you're in chapter 2 of like the next book.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's my issue
Mm.
with this. I honestly think if this movie ended about 20 minutes earlier,
Yeah.
I think it has the potential to kind of feel a little better.
20 minutes earlier, but still with the indication that we're in the wrong universe.
Yes,
So here,
something like that.
yeah,
Because the problem that I'm feeling is this movie, I think, is going to be a very fantastic 5 hour long movie.
yeah.
I think if you sit down and
Need to
what was I saying? Oh, right. So this movie is probably going to be like a very good 5 hour long movie
Hmm.
because you do almost feel like this where we are is like the end of Act Two.
Yeah,
You have Act One is everything up until like Spider-Man India,
yep.
and then Act Two is everything with the Spider
Spider Society,
Society,
right?
and now you're getting into like the actual end where he's going to go and face
In phase.
Spot.
Although, like, though he's going to go face Sprott. That's my former school secretary's name.
Spart?
Sprott.
Sprite.
Very nice lady. Um, like it very much foregrounds Prowler.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't know to what extent he's gonna be like main in the next movie. But I think a question I had for you was like, did you feel like there was unfinished business with that character?
With Prowler?
Yeah, in the last one.
No, I think and here's the other thing. So a lot of people from what I've read, from what I've
Mm,
heard,
mm,
they're like, this is gonna show Miles like how good he has it.
yeah.
And I'm like, I think Miles knows how good he has it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I've ever seen any of the scenes in the movies and been like, Miles is ungrateful.
Right. He
Like
just kind of goes through typical like
he's a kid, he's 15.
yeah.
So obviously he has some like, emotional growth to do still.
Right.
Um, at the same time, like I think his main struggle is that like he's trying to balance the life of being Spider-Man
Yeah.
with not having his parents find out.
Yeah.
Which, whatever, but like I don't feel like that's not him understanding that he doesn't have it good.
In fact, I think the good relationship with his parents kind of shows that he understands how
How
good he
yeah,
has it. Yeah.
exactly. Um, and that's why I don't think necessarily that we need to go down this route. I
Yeah.
think if they're gonna do it, all right, let's see how it lands. And that's why my ranking for this movie right now, I feel like it's still high because it's it is firing on all cylinders in
Hmm.
just about everything else. Like the animation is fantastic. The music is great. The action is great.
Hmm.
The characters themselves, I think, are great.
Hmm.
The only thing that I'm just like not quite there yet, and like I said, if they land part three,
Yeah.
I think it'll solidify my feeling. But if part three comes out and it just like takes a shit,
Yeah.
or it doesn't quite hit, I'm gonna be like, well, that feels like you wasted my time in two.
Too. I don't know. I don't know to what extent I'm there. And I think for me, it also is for the fact that like I really like this franchise, but I don't like I forgot this shit was coming out this year. Like like I'm not eagerly awaiting
Hmm.
anything in this franchise. I like the pretty pictures in front of my head, right?
You're not a huge Spider-Man like head.
No, not really. No, and I really I love the Tom Holland movies, right? I
Mm.
really really enjoy these movies. But I'm not gonna be like sitting in bed like in 3 weeks being like, oh, I wonder what's gonna happen in Beyond the Spider Verse, right? Whereas, I might do that with I would have done that between Infinity War and Endgame, right?
But that's also the thing, right? So we talked about like cliffhangers and we talked
Yeah,
about um uh Empire Strikes Back and
Infinity War.
Infinity War. Those movies, you do feel like your three arc structure is there.
Yeah,
Like you were saying, like, oh, you don't have to follow the same rules of a normal
right.
movie. But I think there are some things that you do kind of need to have. And you need to have like a beginning, middle, and end. Otherwise, you feel like you're leaving people kind of hanging.
Well, I will say I do think I agree, and this is where I'll come back to what you've been saying. I do think it's highly dependent on how they do the final arc. Because, for example, I think if you have Colin Trevorrow's Duel of the Fates, right?
Yeah,
Right. I'm sorry I'm bringing it back to this, but I think you have a much, 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 much stronger trilogy,
absolutely.
right? Like it
Well,
is,
because you spent half of Rise of Skywalker retconning shit
yeah.
from the past movie.
Like I love The Last Jedi. Like I haven't seen it in years, right? Because like it does feel like that's a wasted movie because of how shit
Yeah, there's
that other movie
nothing
was.
in there matters
Right.
by the time you get to the end of
By the end
Skywalker,
by
right?
the Skywalker, right? Whereas this is all by people with like, did Lord and Miller do all three of these?
I believe so.
Yeah, so it's all by people with the same vision. So I kind of trust them to seal the deal.
Hmm.
And if they can do it, then like I think that's kind of monumentous for this new like you've seen a lot of these franchises in the past decade that are returning to this idea of like meta narrative and like what do we do with this IP that's just been like this IP that's just been in the ether for decades and we keep rehashing it. Like, how do we do something fresh? I
Hmm.
kind of trust them to like seal the deal on the doing something fresh.
And that's
Yeah,
why I feel like I
yeah,
ranked this one as high as I did,
yeah.
because I do feel like they will nail the next one, but it does still make you kind of go, God damn it! Now I gotta wait 10 months
To figure
for
that out,
part three.
it'll go by fast. We have the new Kenneth Branagh Murder on the Orient
Oh
Expressway
hell yeah!
to hold
I'm
us
excited
to
for
hold
that.
us over.
But so here's the thing. I do like the way this movie does
Mm,
escalate. I I do feel like the beginning feels like a lot of meandering
yeah.
because you don't have the resolution at the end. But I don't want to lose any of like the moments between Miles and like his parents.
I think though, but I think this series is one that's earned its right to meander. It's very much a stop and smell the roses type of thing.
Hmm.
Or in this case, it's like look at this fucking pretty picture. Now look at
It's
this fucking
so
pretty
fucking
picture,
cool, dude.
right?
I do okay, so I do have one complaint, and I noticed this a little bit in the first time, but I
Mm,
noticed it a lot more the second time I watched. Some of the backgrounds, especially when you go into Gwen Stacy's Earth,
yeah,
those backgrounds gotta chill, man. There's so much color changing. There's so much like movement happening.
yeah.
And I'm like, I'm trying to focus on this story. And like all of these colors are popping and popping and popping and moving and swaying.
This is the movie where I ended it being like, I don't know how nobody's not had a seizure during this movie, right?
Yeah. Fair though, the first movie was also like that.
Yeah, it
A
was.
lot of like shit just popping in the screen and then like flashing in your eyes.
No, I love it. I think this one's done it the best. I mean, I think this movie is kind of matrixified. This whole like, is it paint? Like, what are we calling this style that Puss in Boots did? That
It's almost like a cell shading.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know if this animation style has a formal name,
Hmm.
but like, obviously, like it works so well that people are emulating it. So I'm fine with it. I have zero notes,
Zero notes. On
zero notes.
animation, I
Yeah.
do think this movie is S tier, 10 out of 10.
Yes.
Uh, I just I hope that other animation studios take the right notes from this.
Unlike Ninja Turtles. I actually think that movie looks like poo poo, like the animation
I don't,
style.
I don't know. I
Yeah.
think I need to actually sit down and watch the actual movie
Yeah.
to see how it fits. To me, I don't disregard it right away because to me it almost feels like graffiti.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is very like Ninja Turtles, very like sewer,
Yeah.
very kind of like grungy and dirty. I do think that makes a little sense. We'll see how it plays when the movie actually comes out.
Mm.
But what I don't want is I know people talk about Pixar face,
Hmm.
but I do think like that was a bad note for studios to take.
Mm.
Where like all these movies, like you have all these advancements in technology.
Hmm.
Fucking what's the movie that came out last year? Lightyear.
Yeah.
Like if you watch the trailer and you took out all the human characters,
Right.
there were some gorgeous ass looking backdrops in that. Like some amazing looking animation.
Yeah.
But then you look at the fucking face models and these derpy ass looking characters just
Yeah.
don't look
Boring faces.
you know, it's awful.
Yeah.
And I do like that DreamWorks and now Sony are having these like, let's switch it up
Right.
because Puss in Boots
It's gorgeous.
for all intents and purposes is still in that same Shrek canon.
I was gonna say I think they balanced that. How did we not do a Puss in Boots episode? But I think I mean I know how, but like since I think they balanced it actually rather perfectly.
And it's something it's new
Yeah,
in the way it looks, the way it's animated. It's very anime.
yeah.
Um,
I don't know if I want Trek 5 to be like that, but we'll
I don't
see.
think it will,
Yeah,
but I do like the fact that it's different, but it still feels like it belongs in the Shrekiverse,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And if they decide, listen, if they decide to change Shrek to kind of fit this
This,
style, who knows?
yeah.
It might be okay. Because when's the last time we got a Shrek movie?
Shrek 4.
Shrek 4. How long ago was that? 20.
It's been a decade, I think.
Yeah?
Dude, I'm fucking so hyped. Shrek 5.
I want to say it's got to be around 2014-ish, maybe, that Shrek 4 came out.
Yeah, that sounds
You
right.
got to do something else because you cannot go back to the same animation style
No,
from
because
10
it
years
does
ago.
it doesn't quite hold up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I do hope they do take this.
Yeah.
They take a good lesson from this.
Yeah.
Um, I do have a couple of questions for
And
you.
I have some questions for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we talk about like the second half of this movie is all about the
Mm.
Spider Society. We get some pretty fun cameos. I do enjoy seeing a lot of these like fucking web slinger,
Yeah.
like seeing web slinger and his horse.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah, that was
it's
awesome.
so fucking funny.
Yeah.
The giant T Rex and everything. But one thing that I personally like, I love Spider Man. Spider Man was like the Marvel thing that I knew from back in
He was the
Mexico.
most popular Marvel character.
He was the
I
most
mean, he probably
popular.
still is, but like
Pre MCU,
there
he
was no
was
contest. Yeah.
absolutely not. It was you
Spider
had
Man was S
Spider
tier.
Man and everything else
Everything else
was
was C tier.
B and C at the
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
highest, right? Um, which is the reason why they sold the
Right?
rights
Yep.
because it was the most profitable one, right? But as far as like my idea of Peter Parker and of Spider-Man as a whole,
Mhm.
I don't think Spider-Man would buy into the bullshit that Miguel O'Hara is selling.
I didn't care for the Miguel O'Hara character.
I don't mind him. I I think there is a place for him. Um, to be fair, I don't know a lot of Spider-Man 2099. My
Yeah.
only knowledge of him comes from like a an old Xbox game called like
Yeah.
Web of Destiny, I think it
Yeah.
was called. There's a segment where you play as Miguel,
Mm.
and it was I was like, oh, this is so cool. It's like future and like
Yeah.
cyberpunk and dope. But that's the extent of my knowledge of Miguel. Um, but so like in this movie, they introduced the idea of canon events,
Hmm.
which is their way of explaining almost like what an incursion is in the MCU,
Yeah.
but different.
There's also this will get into one of my questions later, but there's also when they show like an image of the timeline, it fucking looks just like
It looks like the one from Loki.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But then so that he says like this is the multiverse.
right.
But then he says this is our
Our web,
thing,
yeah,
which is a thing again from like Spider-Man lore.
right.
There's different things. I know there's one that I remember things like the Web of Destiny or something like
Yeah.
that, which is like how all the different Spider-Mans are tied together. Fine, fair. But then they talk about how they have these canon events, which are these like staples in like a Spider-Man
The
story.
cop has to
The
die.
cop has to die. The Uncle Ben has
Yeah,
to die. The Gwen Stacy has to have her neck,
right.
snapped or whatever. The Spider-Man needs to suffer,
Right.
and I I've heard this a lot, especially since No Way Home came out. Where people are like, "Well, why didn't he just tell MJ at the end of the movie that they used to be friends, and then you can be happy. And they're like, well, Spider-Man needs to suffer.
Right.
And I'm like, why?
Right.
Let your fucking Spider-Man be happy for once.
Right.
And Miles already lost his uncle.
Hmm.
I assume that was his Uncle Ben moment,
Yes.
right? Because him
Yes.
and his uncle were very close.
Yes.
Yes, it sucks that he's like a villain,
Yep. But
and
that's he
but it's
also.
his uncle,
Right.
right? It's his. I assume that was his Uncle Ben moment, right? But then in this movie, they introduce the idea that like, oh nope, it needs to be that, but also like a police captain needs to
Well,
die.
I thought that was his. I specifically took it as that's also filling the Gwen Stacy's dad. Like it's a cop who's close to him that has to die.
Yes,
Yeah.
the cop, and
Right.
his it has to be specifically like a captain,
Yeah.
right, or someone higher up in the police department.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm like, okay, if that's what needs to happen naturally in the story, fine. But in this movie, they play with the idea that some of these Spider-Men know that that's happening,
Right.
and they're just gonna let that shit ride.
Yeah.
Where I feel like in every iteration of Spider-Man that I've read or seen or played, he's gonna try to save whoever he can.
It is interesting that all these Spider-Men are so unempathetic to Miles's plight
Yeah.
that they're all just going to try to stop him.
I think the only one that is really shown to be kind of struggling is Peter B. Parker.
And yet he still like buys into it.
Yeah. Even Gwen.
Yeah.
Which when, you do feel Miles is like pain when he like gets like, oh, you fucking betrayed me. Like, I
Yeah.
thought you were my friend, like you were a homie,
Yeah.
and you didn't tell me. Um, so that was done, I think, very well. But in what fucking universe do you as Spider-Man hear, hey, your uncle or your dad or your aunt or your girlfriend or whoever is going to die in a couple days?
Right.
Hang tight.
Hang type.
No. And,
Yeah.
and like at that point, like why bring them in?
So when you say why bring him in, you mean why bring Miles into the Spider Society?
Exactly. Like I feel like you're creating an issue for yourself. Ask Miguel. If you as Miguel think Miles is making like shit worse,
Well, I forget. Was he totally opposed to Miles coming in? I thought he
um,
was.
originally
Yeah.
yes, because they didn't want Gwen to interact with Miles
Right.
for whatever reason
He's not supposed to
because he's
exist.
not supposed to exist.
Yeah.
I do kind of like
Yeah.
that element of the movie. But I do think that having Miles go to the Spider Society and then tell him what's going to happen in
Hmm.
2 days, A, is a risky move as Miguel, like from a Miguel standpoint.
Right.
Um, because again, you're assuming he's going to just be like, okay, cool, let my dad die.
Yeah. So now that you bring this up, I think this actually kind of gets to an interesting question. Like you, I don't know too much about the Miguel O'Hara, right? Um, Other than like having right the obvious Spider-Man costume, like Miguel, and I would say like most of these Spider-Man don't actually feel like Spider-Man.
Go on.
So to this point, like I don't think it's in Spider-Man's character to just be totally unempathetic to a Spider-Man who wants to save like the life of the dear cop in his life,
Mm.
right? Um, you would think that they would be, and actually, ironically, maybe this is a point where people are like to pit this one against No Way Home,
Mm.
right? Um, Maybe this is actually a point where like No Way Home kind of wins out, like when Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire and Tom Holland are all like breathing together, like
They're
each of them is
supportive.
they're supportive. Each of them is acting as you would believe like Peter Parker would act and how like their specific version of Peter Parker would act.
Hmm.
Now, granted, all these Spider-Men aren't necessarily Peter Parker, but like to me, other than the fact that they have spider powers and maybe go through these like events,
Similar.
which we're told about, like we don't see that in like each of
Hmm.
their lives. Um, I don't see what essentially links Miguel O'Hara to Peter Parker to Miles.
It's
Right?
just the spider
And
power.
that's the thing. You're the same character because like the film is telling me you're the same character.
Hmm.
And I think that this also, back to the overall question about what these films are trying to do with, like, how do we make this IP into something not just like fresh in a non-stale sense, but how do we do something revolutionary with this character and not hit out like the same story beats. Um, I don't know, like, I don't know to what extent you can like totally like deconstruct a character and like do something completely fresh with it still being like the same, with it still being the same character.
Hmm. And
Anyway,
I think that's
yeah,
where a character like Miles can step in
yeah.
and do something new, because that's one of the things that I did hear someone who talks about comics. Miles Morales, for as new and exciting as he is, for the most part, like he doesn't have a lot of like memorable things. Like
Mm,
when people think uh, of Spider-Man, it's always Peter
Peter
Parker.
Parker.
Whereas I do think with this movie, you do have a chance to have something new. Someone who's like, this is your guys' story, but like
Yeah,
I want to do my own thing. I want to form
right.
my own canon, right? I do think that that has the potential to then elevate the character a little bit more.
So here's my next question.
Mhm.
Um, which at first I thought was like a silly question. And it's kind of a predictable question. But now I'm actually, especially since we talked about that Loki thing, now I'm actually kind of intrigued. Um, what are the chances that not only that we get Miles Morales in the MCU, but that we get like this specific Miles Morales in the MCU?
Ah,
Because it can be done.
it can be
It,
done.
it can be done.
My my only concern is because of what they did in this movie with live action.
Where they show
So
the little
like
beats.
they're all in New York, which
Yeah,
is Miguel O'Hara's Earth.
yeah.
But then you have these other characters from different realities, different dimensions,
Hmm.
who have been captured and they're being processed to be sent back
Right,
with the go home machine.
right.
Which I do love the fact that in every universe, all the Spider-Man, when they have like their gadgets, it's something stupid named.
Yeah.
So like last in the last movie was like the Goober was the like the USB devices that he used to like hack things.
Hmm.
And now he's got like
Go
the
home.
go home machine. Nothing fancy, right? Um, but in those scenes, like you see characters from other universes
You see
as
one of
they
the live
are
action Uncle
animated.
Bens.
Huh?
You see one of the live action Uncle Bens, don't you?
I don't think
In a little clip.
in the clip you do,
Yeah, yeah.
but that's not even what I'm saying. What I'm saying is like when they're in this universe,
Hmm.
they still look like they do in their original universe,
Mm,
right?
hmm.
Splatterpunk still looks the same way as
Like
he
Spider-Man.
does in his universe.
Yeah.
Um, when they
Childish
show
Gambino.
Childish Gambino, right?
Yeah,
Probably the best cameo in the
yeah,
movie, him dressed up as Prowler,
right.
uh, implied to maybe be MCU.
Yeah, I mean, I think
It's been over 5 years since Homecoming.
it could be MCU, and it could also even be like just as just as fucking Jim Halpert. Why am I blanking on the name? Um, Reed Richards in
Oh,
Doctor Strange.
yeah,
John Krasinski, just as he is like
probably not gonna be.
right, but it's
Yeah, yeah,
I think it could be someone from
a different
a
parallel
different parallel
universe.
universe who
Yeah,
just still looks like
yeah.
Childish Gambino, and
and
it's
and
3D.
but that's the thing.
Yeah,
In here, they're in this world,
yeah,
and he looks human, right? He
yeah,
looks like us.
yeah,
And the little sprite from the like old like Sega game. This it's
yeah,
supposed to be the Green Goblin, but he
yeah,
looks like an 8-bit character,
yeah,
right? So it's in this is it's saying that when things come from another universe, they look like they do in theirs.
yeah.
So if this version of Miles were to go into the MCU,
He would have to look
he
animated,
would have to look
and
animated.
that's what
Yeah.
it
What?
would be very Song of the South.
Oh
or Mary Poppins to pick a less problematic example.
no!
But like, it, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but there is enough precedent of what's already happened between Sony and Disney. Um, and in this movie, not just, I mean, now I'm reading too much into that timeline look, but like, they fucking putting Donald Glover in there, like, as live action. Like, it could
It
happen.
could.
Yeah.
So my only thing is, if they do bring in, if they bring in
Yeah.
Miles Morales into the MCU,
Yeah.
I would want it to be this Miles, not necessarily in the animated, but this personality,
Yeah.
this
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
backstory,
Yeah.
right? Because I think this is a good character to have. Like, this is a good origin. This is a good personality.
Yeah.
Uh, I do think that then starting over and then giving you again
Hmm.
an origin story of everything that we've already seen in these two really good movies,
Yeah.
I think it would be a waste. And I think people would kind of be like, well, you already have this ongoing at the exact same time.
And even though there's enough examples where, how many Batmans are there now? Ben
Right
Affleck,
now,
Robert Pat,
concurrently,
yeah,
oh,
Ben Affleck, Robert
Jesus,
Pattinson, fucking
fucking Keaton.
Keaton, right? Even though like there's enough examples of like where you can have the same character happening all the time, I will still say not confusing where I'm a total boomer and I'm like I don't understand how this is happening, but it does kind of it does take a lot of like now I sound like a millennial. It takes a lot of mental bandwidth to be like, now I have to be invested in this Batman, and this Batman, right?
I just think it's because I think this movie really popularized Miles.
Yeah,
This is what people are going to be expecting.
yeah,
And I think if you try to then mess with that, I don't know if they'll be willing to accept it. And I don't think you want to risk that with a new Spider-Man who happens to be Black Puerto Rican,
yeah,
and you don't want the masses to like automatically be like, no, this is not my Miles,
right,
right? I think you want to avoid that as much as you can.
yeah,
I do want him, and they've already said at the red carpet, Amy Pascal said they are making a live action Miles Morales
movie,
somehow.
something, yeah,
I don't know how they'll do it.
yeah,
They've got some fan casting, which I think actually could be not bad.
right.
Um, but they also said they have a Spider Gwen thing
Cast,
coming.
yeah.
Well, not cast, but something coming.
Oh, is that one of the shows? I can't remember.
I don't think it's a show. I think what they'll do is they'll do a movie
Okay,
under Sony.
but MCU or no?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And that's also the
Oh
thing.
wait, that's what
They
Sydney Sweeney's involved in, right? Isn't she involved in
No,
some
she's involved in
Morbius 2?
not Morbius too, but it's it's the new Madam Web movie
That's right.
coming out.
That's right.
Sydney Sweeney is playing, oh geez, what's her name? It might be Jessica Drew,
Okay. I don't know who the fuck that
but
is.
a white version of Jessica Drew.
Huh?
Um, so who knows? By the way, Jessica Drew in this movie.
Which one is Jessica Drew?
Jessica Drew is the she's Spider Woman with the motorcycle,
Ah, I see, I see, I
and
see.
a bunch of irresponsible parents
Gotcha.
because
Yeah.
did fucking Peter B. Parker showing around
With
chasing people with a baby,
a baby. She's got a baby.
and then she's knocked up.
Yeah.
Dude, one punch to the tummy.
Yep. Bye
That
bye.
baby is done
Bye
so.
bye, Spider Baby.
Bye bye, Spider Baby. Um, we'll see. We'll see how this goes. I'm like I said, I'm not down on this movie. Oh, one thing that I do want to point out.
Mm.
Holy shit, how is this movie only $100 million?
Yeah.
God damn.
Yeah.
Like the amount of animation on this.
Because I think Jeremy Johns was the one who said that you could literally take any frame from a movie and you could fucking turn it into like a painting that you would hang in your apartment.
And he's not wrong.
He's not wrong.
Shit. Like even just backgrounds.
Yeah. And like
any fucking
yeah,
shot in
yeah.
this. And that is not cheap.
Nope.
It to me, honestly, that is the most mind-boggling shit. The fact that this is 100 million and fucking Fast X is $350 million
Yeah.
is insane.
And that movie does not have a Transformers crossover. Now, neither does this movie.
Neither does this,
But,
but
but,
the options are there, man.
yeah.
Those movies are getting wild enough that you probably could.
Yeah.
Um, I think, I think this is it.
I think this is it.
This is it.
Yeah.
The deed is done. The movie happened. I enjoyed it.
And it was a lovely time.
It
Go
was a
see
lovely
it.
time. I did go see it twice. Oh, by the way, how long did it take you to realize he was not in the right place? What was
Oh,
the thing that made you go, oh,
well, you said something which then like got me thinking. It was pretty early. I don't remember what the thing was. Um, maybe early on she says like, "Oh, your hair looks funny." And I was like, I don't remember anything like happening with his hair. Yeah. It did kind of feel the fact that she was just like going about doing laundry and wasn't like, "Oh, hey, like, you know,
how was the girl?
yeah, yeah." I will say the way that they juxtapose both scenes back and forth, like
Hmm.
both settings, is I think as seamless as you could have done it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it does do a good job at tricking you. I noticed when he gets scanned by the machine,
Mm,
it says universe Earth 42,
42.
and I was like, earlier it said he was like Earth like 1060.
Yeah,
I
I
was
can't
like,
fucking keep track as to
I was
which
like,
one.
that's not right. And then you also noticed, I noticed this the first time.
Yeah.
Um, and then the second time I confirmed, her eyes are green in the second universe. And I remember
Oh,
when there's a close up on her face, I was like, her eyes look weird.
LaGuartas?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought that was a good way to handle that.
Yeah.
Um, in a way, I was kind of hoping Gwen would be like, "Hey, listen, like shit's going on. Please just be chill."
Yeah.
But I also don't want her to be the one to tell
To tell him.
his parents about
Right.
his secret. So I get why she didn't go into details. But yeah, this is a good place to stop. We're going to do another recording for
A less good
a
movie.
less good
A
movie.
significantly less good
Hey,
movie.
you know what?
A movie that you walked into not thinking would be good.
That implies that you thought it was still good. If it's less good, it means there's some good in
There's some good. There was 1.5 stars worth of good in this,
it.
in this
All right.
movie.
On that note, we will be back soon with a review for The
The
Boogeyman.
Boogeyman.
Boogeyman. Until then, this has been the Senseless Podcast. He is Thano.
He's Javier.
Bye.
Bye.